I know a lot of y'all are tired of new programming languages, but I'm not. I'm really excited for this. Civet is a thing I just heard about. I don't know how old it is, but I know it's really, really cool, and I cannot wait to tell you guys all about it. It's not your normal, all-new from-scratch programming language. It's actually a superset of TypeScript. Very interesting. Do you know what else is interesting? Today's sponsor, so let's hear from them really quick. If you've ever tried to build an AI agent, you've probably run into the same problem I often do. Getting the data that you need out of websites is not easy. Today's sponsor, Bright Data, is here to make it way easier. They're the best way to give your AI agents access to pretty much any data that exists on the internet. They handle everything from request proxying to virtual browsers to even getting around CAPTCHAs. They kind of just built the whole scraping cloud. And this stuff is not easy to roll yourself. Take it from someone who's tried far too many times in order to get this type of data out. Hell, even other tools I've used like OpenAI's Operator, which costs like $200 a month, regularly gets stopped by CAPTCHAs and other blocking things. Bright Data's scraping browser will never have those problems. In fact, if OpenAI was using it, it'd probably be a much more reliable product. This isn't some random new company either. They're being used by a ton of very legit groups, from the United Nations to McDonald's to Mozilla and many, many more. If you don't think you need this product, awesome. Go try scraping the web yourself. The moment that you start having problems, know that Bright Data is the best, most reliable, most scalable, and probably even the cheapest solution in order to get the data that you're trying to for your AI apps and AI agents. Check them out at soydev.link/brightdata and make sure to tell them that Theo sent you. Civet, programming language for the new millennium. Code more with less in a TypeScript superset. This is fun because TypeScript's already a superset of JavaScript, which means that all of the code from the original language still works, but they've added things on top. It's a superset. It is a set that is larger than the original set. So this is a wraparound TypeScript the same way that TypeScript's a wraparound JS, where it supports everything that existed before, as well as awesome new functionality. Civet's a programming language that compiles to TS or JS, so that you can use existing tools like VS Code's type checking, hints, completion, etc., while enabling concise and powerful syntax. It starts with 99% JS and TS compatibility, which makes it easy to transition existing code bases. I am curious what they mean by this 99%, so we'll take a look at that in a moment, but I want to go through the homepage first, because there's some cool stuff and some good comparisons here. The main focus is all of the fun features and syntactic sugar that they add on top, with some highlights below and more comprehensive examples in the reference. They also have a page on their design philosophy, which we'll certainly read. I tend to love those pages. But let's take a look at the examples here. A lot of them are based on existing proposals, so they're implementing things from TC39 a little bit easier, but they also have their own syntactic way of doing things. So here we have a switch statement using pattern matching. So we have X, and these are the different things it could be. It could be 0, and if X is equal to 0, we log 0. If X matches this regex, which is checking for white space, we log white space. But if X is an array where the first element is type : text, comma, content, and these are both valid keys, then we know that we are using an array that starts with text. This pattern is very common in languages like Elixir, where it even goes a step further and you can overload a function and in the function specify these types of things. This basically is saying that if this argument is an array and its first element is an object that has a key type with the value text, then you can call this code. Otherwise, skip and check the next one. I love this. I wish it was on a function level. I understand why it's not. I really want pattern matching to ship in JS. And if you look at the code it puts out, it might make a little more sense. If X is equal to 0, we do that. Else, if type of X is string and this regex.test matches, then we do that case. Otherwise, we check that it's an array. We check it's longer than 1. We check the first value is an object. We check that it's not null. We check that type's a valid value in that first index in X. We check that it is text and that content also exists. And then we call this code. This is why I like pattern matching. It makes things significantly simpler for cases. The syntax does also not feel very JS-y because it's missing like the brackets and the parentheses and all of the things we're used to in JS. And that'll be a theme as we go through. Definitely Elixir inspired or Ruby inspired or wherever you want to point to it, but we'll get there. My favorite, this is when I decided I had to make the video. Pipes. Finally. I don't love this example because what usually ends up happening looks more like, let me just pull up cursor. I'll grab this code. We have data, object keys, console log. What we usually end up doing is const keys equals object.keys data. And then, keys.forEach key, console log key, data key, something like this. Or at the very least, console.log keys. This is so common. Now imagine you have like 5 steps. Like after you switch it to keys, you use those keys to grab something from something else. So like in this, they have the like and syntax, I think, dot map. So here we'd take a key and we'd grab some other object key console. Now if I was to do this separately, I'd have to do it like this. I'd have const other values equals that. And now I have other values there. But you no longer have to like define all of these or do some nasty shit like this and then put that here. It's just a way cleaner way to do multiple things to values. I love pipes. I really want them. I really, really want them in TypeScript. Here's a fun example from the official proposal. Look at that. Tell me that's not wonderful. Tell me this doesn't get you excited. It gets me very excited. I want it so badly. They also have fat pipes, which are very interesting because they allow you to manipulate the same object multiple times. So if you want to have an object like this element and you want to change the class name and you want to call .append child on it too, this is a weird syntax for it. This is where I start to be less sure how I feel about it. It's so much less annoying than the JS alternative though. Fascinating. Also the and, as I mentioned before, this is how you reference the value above. So you don't have to define a variable. Here you say we have a, and then a is now the argument. It's the thing from above being piped in there, +1, and then that goes to bar. I know here this looks really simple, but once you start changing these things a lot, you either end up with a absolute chaos here or something entirely unreadable. This makes logic chains so much easier to reason about once they get more complex. In the proposal here, they have a real world example with chalk.dim where we have to call this object.keys, we map, we join, pass to node, then args join. There's just so many layers to these things. And if we were to have pipes, it just becomes so much simpler to take object.keys, pipe it to the map function, pipe it to the join function, pipe it to the args. It simplifies these things. And then you pipe it to console log at the end. What's weird here is the console log's what happens last, but it's the first thing that you read. So the order that this code is in isn't the order that things are supposed to be happening. It's not the order of the logic that we wrote and thought about. Because before the console log runs, all of this stuff inside of it has to run first. It's so much nicer to call these things in the order they happen and pass the result to console log. This video is over a year ago. I've waited years for this JS feature. I go in depth on why I so badly want pipes. Please give me pipes. That's all I'm asking for. This is my least favorite for sure, the single argument function shorthand. So if you're calling a function with just one argument, it makes it really easy to do that without having to wrap parens for it. So x.map.name is calling x.map $$.name. This is a weird way of from x making an array of just name. Here we are grabbing x profile.name 0 to 3. And if we look at the comparison here, $1, $1.profile, $.name, $slice 0 to 3. I don't like this being how that part is done. It's weird. This syntax doesn't read right in my JS brain. And I could absolutely see this being weird in code review, especially if it was like partially adopted, if some people were doing this and some weren't. This doesn't map to how my TypeScript brain works quite as well. And just throwing in ranges is weird when that isn't a thing in JavaScript, really. Custom infix operators is very strange too. The ability to define an operator that does a thing. So here we're taking value. Its min is the ceiling and its max is the floor. So we're calling it with max, min, value, ceiling. So you get the minimum between these and you get the max, which is the value between those. I don't like this as much. Yeah. What I'm realizing is the things that are proposals that already exist for JS I like, and the ones that aren't, I like less. Okay, this is one I actually really like. Declarations and conditions in loops. Not having to declare outside and then set a value like this. Instead, it's match : equals regex.exec. This is nice. This is good syntax for not having to do a weird let definition above, rebind it over and over again until you get the actual results you want. A if statement that is also a declaration. That is useful to me. Also, in that vein, I was iffy on this one. I think I've come around to liking it. I much prefer to define all my variables with const. Like I like to specify like this is a new variable and I shouldn't be scrolling up to try and find where this was defined. So I don't love that this is items equals for item of items. I would have liked const items, but this already exists. So I guess that's fine. But what's cool here is when you call for item of items, and you return things in it, the result's an array now. So no longer do you have to call .map and create a new closure. Now you just write this simple English and you can update items with a for loop like that. The argument can be made that map only exists because for loops are the wrong abstraction. And if we adjust for loops properly, the need for map goes away. And this is an example of what that would look like. Pretty cool. This I love. I want this so badly. Being able to return an if statement. Oh, I want that so bad. The alternative would be you move the return to each of these and you have multiple returns. But I love the idea of the return allowing for conditionals, because I'm sure we've all written this code before. What we have written before, return x is null, question mark, throw or, and then in here you have to do multiple things. You can't just log, so you have to put this here. And you have to like multi-line this in some way. It's not great. It's not great at all. I like this syntax. People are getting mad that self-executing shit is bad. I have written this code here too many times, but I feel you. Ideally, the language would do this, and you don't need to do a self-executing function in order for it to work. It is what it is. This I actually really like, being able to define on an import a thing. So if you want part of fs, you just want read and write, you don't want the rest. This is very convenient. I like this syntax a lot too. Do expressions. Yes, I want do so bad. I want do so bad. Yeah, there's a lot of cool things in here. This I don't love. We don't need yet another syntax for object notation like this. There are cool parts, but I don't need it. Okay, this is absolutely needs to be a thing. A proper like string proposal, and dedent is the official one. There's a library that lets you do this. It removes common leading indentation for multi-line template strings. So if you have indentation here, in order for this to fit in your code base, the output ends up with a lot more tabbing than you intend. But in order for this to log the way you would actually want it to, it looks like this in your code base. So your options are, it looks right in your code base and it logs wrong, or it looks wrong in your code base but it logs right. This needs to be fixed. There's a library called dedent that does this for you. But this should be part of the standard. There should be a syntax for this. I think, yeah, they have it as string.dedent in the proposal. This needs to be a thing. Cool that they got that early, though. Chain comparisons. Finally, the amount of times I've made this mistake where I wrote this code and it just doesn't work because you have to make each condition separate. Because the way that this evaluates in JS isn't if I had like 1 for A, 2 for B, and C for 3. It calculates as A is less than B. Okay, 1 is less than 2. True. Now it's checking true is less than or equal to C. Ugh. Gross. With this, they'll just handle that for you. They do the right code, which is A less than B and B is less than C. Or min is less than or equal to null and value is greater than or equal to min. Oh, so much better. JS, half of these things, and I guess my problem with the proposal is half of these things are how JS should just work. The other half are things that are not JS-y at all. This, I like const here. Again, when you're declaring a variable, I like it to be declared, so you know this is a new variable, not a thing coming from above. Not a win I care about here. Spread in any... Yes, more elixirisms. This is so cool. I'm sure we've all at some point enjoyed the fact that if we had like an array, like const r equals 1, look at that. If I had const a rest equals r, this is great because now a is 1 and rest is an array of 2 and 3. What if I wanted the opposite? What if I wanted head, tail? What if I wanted tail to be 3 and to have the rest be 1, 2? Or another thing that's surprisingly common, head, body, tail. This should be 1 array of 2, 3. But since JS is reading this start to finish, it only works one way. The only thing you can do here is this. And other better languages, like, my beloved Elixir, it just works the way it's supposed to. In JavaScript, it's nice that we can pull off the first element, but we can't really do the rest. Also with objects, you can't. Now, they'll handle it for you. They'll call the splice, do that stuff. It should have just worked this way. And again, this is the theme. Half of this is how JS should have worked. The other half is things I don't want. Funny enough, the function example is one of the most important because the misery that is how arguments are spread in functions in JS is why I only ever recommend single argument functions. Your functions should take an object that has all of the keys that are your config. Because if you want to spread or pass some things and not others and all of that, the order matters too much in JS. If you had just one object, you can handle it yourself. And even with this example with the object syntax, like I could do A, comma, B, comma, spread rest. And that's what it compiles out to, because that's fine. And since it's an object, I can reorder the keys that I'm defining here. You can't reorder it in a list because it's a list. It has an order already. Here, you also wouldn't be able to because the function has an order already. But if the order is an order with an array of one item and you have an object in it, now you can do the same thing that you did here. So this one's kind of solved with objects. This one is solved because you've changed the order. This one is unsolved, and I want it solved right now. And if you solve this, you could also make functions with multiple arguments less stupid. People are asking in chat, like, what does this actually do if you do it the wrong way? If my JS foo is to be trusted, sum is going to have the exact same contents as the array, and other will be undefined. Oh, syntax. Yeah, syntax error instead. That was a real option I should have considered. Rest element must be last element. Lame. Yeah, chat agreed with me. It should have been sum is the whole array, others undefined. But yeah, we get an error instead. JavaScript, man. This one's weird. I think this is not that necessary and just makes the likelihood that your syntax highlighting breaks higher. Do they not require closing elements? No, I missed this part. I didn't scroll this far when I first looked through it. Oh, gross. This is some Elm shit. This ruins what I like about JSX. Don't do this to me. Gross. Ugh. Also, JSX is both just XML, meant to be HTML, and also just JS. I hate for components. We have a for loop. It's called a for loop. Just use that. Well, in this case, a map. Not my favorite. Builder.io sponsored, which is cool. But what I want to do next is go look at their design philosophy. I want to hear more about how they think. Civet's a large language that feels small. It's large because it's mostly a superset of TS, which is an already large language. It feels small because of the coherent design aesthetic. Related functions look and behave similarly. So when seeing a new feature, you can have a good idea of what it does, and your existing knowledge of JS and other languages will lead you to the right direction. This is a thing that is not the case in JS. Related features do not look and behave similarly. It's almost random how different things behave. So I like the goal here, but if the way things look conflicts enough with the way TS looks and works, that can be problematic. But they do have good callouts here. It works with existing tools, and they're not trying to replace the TS type checker. They want to amplify its power. They're not trying to change ES semantics. They're trying to present them in a coherent and expressive way. Less syntax is preferred. Not as in less characters for a given function, but less different types of syntaxes to do things. That said, there are things where I feel like they're making it less characters. Like if we go back to the for loop thing, this is just less syntax for the sake of less characters, where you don't put the const here because you shouldn't have to. If this is what they mean by less syntax, like you don't have to put the const here, I'm not in favor of it. If what they mean is that they're reusing the paradigms and patterns in multiple places, that I'm okay with. Context matters. Interesting. The same tokens can mean different things in different contexts. It shouldn't be arbitrary. It should be based on pragmatic concerns. Things should be consistent where possible, especially conceptually. Use const more. Anyways. They're building on top of history. Oh, they called out some fun languages here. They're taking inspiration from languages like CoffeeScript, Elm. I sniped Elm out so hard. I knew as soon as I saw the JSX example that Elm was an inspiration. Also, Crystal. Crystal is like the coolest and most beautiful language that I've never seen anyone actually use for anything. God, I saw one project that was written in Crystal recently, and I was surprised. But I've just never seen people use this language. It's very Elixir inspired, but it's a native language that compiles down to native code, so it's not running in a VM like Elixir is. Beautiful, super simple syntax. Typing, built in. Nil checking. Concurrency, very easy. Call times, you call spawn. Now you've spawned multiple things, and it will pull it all together. I love it. Oh, Mint the framework, that was the thing. Funny enough, the other weird front-end language, Mint. I have a video I recorded about this a while back, and we had a ton of problems because the site runs on Mint, which meant that my audience going to the site killed it immediately. But I do have a video about this in my best attempts to play with it, because there were some cool ideas here too. Don't know which order these videos will come out. This might already be out. This might come out later. My video might be gone entirely by the time this one comes out. Who knows? Mint is interesting. But Mint is the only Crystal project I've seen, which is funny because like Crystal's a language I've never seen anyone use. And the thing it's been used for is to make yet another language that no one else is using. Yeah. Anyways, there's a lot of Crystal inspiration there too. To be fair, Crystal is inspired largely by Elixir. And it's sad to not see Elixir called out here, but a lot of the things that are called out are inspired by Elixir and vice versa, like Haskell and Perl, and obviously Ruby are huge inspirations for Elixir. And obviously CoffeeScript. I saw this on Hacker News initially, and all of the comments are, it's CoffeeScript. And yeah, the difference being at least CoffeeScript was popular enough that if you adopted it, people wouldn't be too mad at the time. This is new enough and not popular enough that if you add this to your code base and other people work there, they're probably going to be mad. Somebody in chat asked, how are you inspired by Bash? Pipes. Bash said pipes forever. And people are also calling out that Elixir is inspired by Ruby. Yes, the creator of Elixir is Jose Valim. And Jose was a huge member of the Rails and Ruby community. He was a Rails core team person for a while. And he was tired of Ruby and wanted to find better things. He found Erlang, fell in love with it. The syntax is awful. So he took a lot of the syntax from Ruby and made it way more FP and built on top of Erlang. But all the things I like about Elixir aren't the Rubyisms. They're the Elixirisms, like pipes, like pattern matching, like overloading, like gen server. All of those pieces that are what I love Elixir for. Just the concept isn't even viable in Ruby. Back to the philosophy here. Civet is pragmatic. Its design is informed by 25 plus years of JS development. Front-end frameworks have come and gone, but they all addressed issues that were important for their time. We focus heavily on addressing concerns that real devs feel every day. A key criteria for evaluating features is, how does this work in practice? Right way to do things. I'd hope most things are doing this. I know TypeScript team is thinking like this. Civet evolves. As the official JS and TS specs evolve in the future, Civet will also evolve, favoring compatibility. This may lead us to difficult choices where the future spec has evolved differently than we anticipated, like if pipe operators end up being done differently, or do expressions or pattern matching. In those cases, Civet will adapt to match the latest spec while providing configuration options to allow migrations bit by bit while keeping existing code working. It is also configurable. There is no single right way for everyone at all times. Some of us have older CoffeeScript codebases that would benefit from the added types. Others have massive TS applications that could benefit from new language features and shorthand syntax. Civet provides a way to get the benefits bit by bit without a complete rewrite. The same configurability lets us experiment with language features to gain experience and improve them before locking them in. It also allows us to adapt to a changing future. It's important to have a philosophy page like this early. This isn't quite as specific as I would have liked, just for a comparison to another thing that is like the philosophy of it. The Thinking in StyleX page is a masterclass in this type of thinking and writing. It's so good. It breaks down how different solutions work, how they made the decisions they made, what their specific goals are. It's a great doc. Check this out. It's cool to see something like it here, but it's not quite where I'd want it to be. Anyways, let's check out the direct comparison to JS and TS. They say 99% compatible, but there are intentional deviations. Let's see the intentional deviations. In Civet, arrow functions with a single arg need to wrap the arg in parentheses. Otherwise, it gets treated like an implicit function call. Interesting. I hate that. I hate this so much. The advantage of this approach is that zero-argument functions don't need parentheses at all in order to indicate arguments. So you can do this. That's not a benefit. That is weird. I don't like that. Why would I... I'm even more confused. Okay, this example is useless. Doing it with nothing here is purely dumb. This, if you just delete that, it just gets invocated anyways. This one is conflicting with how a JS brain works. I don't like this simply because it's similar enough to doing this in JS that if you're coming from a JS or TS code base and looking at this quick, you're going to read this entirely wrong and not realize that create effect is calling a function. I don't like this idea of reusing arrow to mean either defining a function or calling a function. Arrow should have one meaning, which is defining function, or I guess greater than equal to. That's a joke. It should only be used for defining functions. To use it to define or call a function is reusing of syntax in a way that does nothing but confuse you. especially since you still use the same syntax for the defining here. You just have to add the parentheses here. I do not like this. And if we already have, so because we have pipes, the way I would want this to work, since we have pipes, I take this, hop back in the code, example here. Instead of create effect, because like remember our goal is to create effect and have this get an anonymous function that does this. Like this is our goal. Here's one more close paren. We want to have create effect call this anonymous function. The way I would do this, since we have other primitives, is I would define this inline function here, and then I would pipe it to create effect. Now we have the function, and it's being passed to create effect. The reason I care is the thing that I optimize for, and the reason I like pipes so much, the reason I like these patterns so much, is I want my code to, as clearly as possible, read from top to bottom, describing what happens. The problem if this is done the other way, if it's not done like this, if it's done as create effect, and then in here I do this function definition, is this isn't the order of events here. Because the function has to be defined before create effect can be called with it. So ideally this would be defined first. And the way I would do this right now in JS, as annoying as it is const log signal is this, and I would pass that like that. Pipes let you just not define the function while still getting this benefit. What I like so much about this is when you write things like this, it reads top to bottom. We define the function, and then that is bound via the create effect. Where here, create effect is being called with a definition implicitly happening there. Way less clear. I don't want this video to just be me like glazing pipes and how they solve every problem, but they make code way more readable. You can read top to bottom and know what things actually fucking doing. It's the point where most code gets harder to understand and read is when you can't top to bottom see what it is doing. When something here calls something up there, that calls something for a different file, that then calls another file, that then calls back to a different function in the file you're currently in. Not fun. Most people call that model view controller. I call it anti-patterns. Back to the things that differ. All functions implicitly return the value of their last statement. You can disable this function by adding a semicolon at the end of the last statement, declaring a void return type, or adding an explicit return. Function more, x plus 1, hello, console log. I hate that. I hate that so much. Meaningful semicolons. Oh god, no. There's this list of syntactical things that all of these new languages love to do that I hate. Gleam's a little guilty of this too, where Gleam does implicit returns. It also does pipes, which is really nice. And here's a good example. We have a range between 0 and 200,000. For each element, we spawn a task, and then for each of those, we await. It's super easy to just spin up threads, and in the order that things happen, describe it. But it also has implicit returns. So technically speaking, this async task function is returning io.println. I don't like implicit returns. I understand why people do. I've worked in languages with them for a long time. Just put the word return, makes the code more readable, especially long term. And if your solution to the fact that you can't always return something is to reuse semicolons in such a strange way, no. I hate this. Not dislike. This is the breaking, I'm not going to use this point for me. No. Bad. And if in case it's not clear what's happening here, I'll point out. In this function, console log hello world, that gets returned. Here, since there's a semicolon, it doesn't get returned. If you manually type it as a void return, it also won't get returned, which is fine, knowing that type definitions matter now. And if you explicitly return nothing, then it will explicitly return nothing. But I hate this. I hate this so much. The other thing you don't get if you don't use like a return keyword is you don't get early returns. I can't have a check on top that if X, return early. Elixir gets out of that because of the way they do function overloading with guards, where I can redefine the same function 5 times and have the early return be an early definition of the function that catches those cases. Other languages don't have those benefits, so almost every other language needs to have return instead. Here's a fun call out. In JS, only arrow functions without braces implicitly return a value. So here, this will return x plus 1, but if you add a semicolon, it no longer will. I hate this. I hate semicolons having behaviors like this. This is so cursed. The fuck? I hate this. Also, it's a small thing. I would never write this way. Here's how I would write that code. And like this is just opinion differences, and I get it. If x is less than or equal to 5, returns large, otherwise returns small. This is how I write that code. This, I don't care what fucking programming language you're from. This reads really nice. This does not. I cannot fathom why, and I'm saying it's like, again, I am an Elixir fanboy, and the Elixir way of writing this is more like this. This is so obviously better. Get those ternary operators out of here, sir. I have to showcase, every time I get the chance to glaze Elixir, I'm going to take it. So function, get size, sure. This makes sense to most of y'all, hopefully. The thing that I love about Elixir is instead of having one get size function that handles all the cases, I'm not going to write this in Elixir, but I'm going to write it the Elixir way. The Elixir way is you could say x num is greater than 5. And in here, we just return large. And now we know if this one gets hit, it's because x isn't greater than 5. We could also have one more that's like function get size x any return unknown. This is the magic of Elixir. You write the same function multiple times, and what we're used to as the type def of arguments isn't just a type def. It's a specific binding to a behavior. And this function won't get called if this statement isn't true. I love this because, again, top priority, top to bottom readability, and clarity in where the things happen. I love the overloading in Elixir so much. So as a simple example with Elixir, thank you, Claude, def get size x when is number x and x is 5, we do this. We redefine the function when x is number too small, and we have last def get size underscore x. Since we're not using it, we underscore it to indicate that, because there is still an argument. Because if you call this with no arguments, that's a different function. And here we say unknown. I love this. Oh, it's so good. You're asking, is this better than just pattern matching? Yes, because you don't have to do it inside of the function. If this was actual pattern matching in JS, instead of just a switch statement, this would do the same thing, but it's so much more. It's not the Elixir way anymore. The other is actually working. What you have to do is switch true. I hate this. The biggest difference here is the tab depth. We're 3 tabs in for the case we care about. I hate that. Yeah, I really like the overloading. It's a cool pattern. Back to Civet. Enough talking about good languages. We're talking about JavaScript. Spread any position. I talked about this one. This one I like because this is things that JS should do, and right now it errors when you try. It should just do this. I like that. Destructuring in imports. This shouldn't be a different syntax. I hate that x as and y as, that this is a different syntax because we're using object syntax, but then it's not an object when we do this way. I like the reuse of syntax here. This is an example of minimal, so to speak, syntax that I think is cool. Next one thing I don't care about, the JSX thing. Your mind has been rotted by Elm, and I will never forgive you for this one. Apparently, if you don't like implicit returns outside of single-line functions, you can turn it off entirely with a Civet directive. That's cool that you can turn all these things off. Operator spacing. Binary operators cannot have spaces after them. Binary operators should either have spaces on both sides or on either side, or no space on either side. I hate this. Significant white space always makes me upset. I hate this. I hate this so much. You should just require, every language should require this. I know Go, my least favorite thing about Go format is that in Go format, there will never be white space between the operators, so you just always write like this or like this, which is so cursed. Yeah, do not want. Civet supports /regex blocks, so you shouldn't use comments with a /. No, don't. Why do they always do this? All I want in a language, here's my dream language spec sheet. No significant white space. I do want semicolons. Explicit returns. Pipes, function overloads with pattern matching. Should put pattern matching here too. Type safe, implicit, return types. That's all I'm asking for. I'm like 3 features away from TypeScript being what I want. Oh, errors as values, yeah. Insane package management. Then there's like things I would like around concurrency type shit, but this is, I want a much more minimal abstraction on top of TypeScript. Yeah, I hate these things. This is, we don't need to turn TypeScript into Python. Cursor suggesting no comments is hilarious. Oh, what was the term for fixing the white space thing? What was it? Dedent by default. Oh, emojis as valid variable names. I think that covers all my asks. The spec sheet for my dream language. Let me know who implements it. Braced blocks. You can wrap blocks in braces or not, but to avoid conflicts with braced object literals, there are some restrictions. There's actually a fun mistake I see a lot in TypeScript code bases. If I have like X number and I bind that to Y, X times 2, what does this return? You'd think it returns this object, Y, X times 2. It doesn't. It returns syntax error because this is actually computing to this because the brackets are being used both for a wrapper for the block that you've defined as well as for object syntax in general. So to solve that, you have to wrap that with parens first. Really fun. Let's see how they solve that here. It's whether or not this is on a new line. Oh no. Automatic semicolon insertion. Oh boy. Maple's favorite topic. JS has complicated rules for automatic semicolon insertion. Civet has a different set of rules for what separates different statements, which are hopefully closer to your intuition. Binary operators and member access can continue on the next line, but only when spaced in the natural way. So here, x plus y minus z, since there's no semicolons, it will infer that this is meant to be something. But when you do minus negative like this, since there's no space, it infers that that's a different line. I actually have no idea how JS handles these. Const x equals 1, const y equals 2, const z equals 3, x plus y plus z. I'm going to change z to something else. Let's do const a equals 12. Change this, I was just writing, to be a. Yeah. So you put the semicolon there, then we add x and y, and then we have plus a is just an output. When you put a plus in front like that, it casts to int, but it's already an int, so it just stays an int. I do that, change 15. Yeah, I would say JS is kind of intuitive here. And the thing that isn't intuitive is if I delete that space, that is the equivalent of putting a semicolon here. That is not intuitive to me. I don't agree that this is more intuitive. I might just be too deep in JS world, but it is what it is. Okay, this is good. The arrow function bracket wrapper is so bad because label colon is both the syntax for defining a key in an object and the syntax for labeling a loop. So if I want to break from this loop somewhere else, you label it like that. I actually do like this. The label syntax being different from the key syntax in objects, that's a good change. Since Civet uses at as a shorthand for this static and constructor, decorators have to be written with 2 ats instead. That's fine. It's yet another reason to not write decorators, which I'm almost always cool with. Decorators also can't be on the same line as a method. Implicit call syntax. Oh, I hate this. I hate this so much. At fetch at coffee cup becomes this.fetch called by this.coffee cup. You have pipes. Why do you have to reinvent how you call functions over and over again? Stop doing that. They're weird JSX stuff that doesn't need to be closed. I hate it. I hate it so much. There's a Civet directive, coffee JSX. I'm going to hate this. It's deprecated, thankfully. Oh no, CoffeeScript 2 has JSX built in. Oh god. At least they require you to close it. I wanted to love this. I really did. I went in hopeful. The top here got me very excited. But as we scrolled further and learned more, the amount of pain I was in continued to increase. Am I a JS soy boy in the end? Has my brain been rotted by this language? Can I not recover? I don't know how to wrap this one up. Use whatever language you want and go play with some Elixir. It's pretty fun. Until next time, peace nerds.